Welcome to this first episode of Venenamundi in this new playlist dedicated to the history of poisons, venoms and toxins. Over the course of the next 50 or so episodes, we'll look at the art and science of poisoning from prehistoric times to the present day. Along the way, we'll learn the answers to many interesting and important questions. For example, who was arguably the most prolific poisoner of all time? Why did poisoning become one of the world's most popular political weapons? What role did the study of poisons and toxins have in gaining a better knowledge of how the human body works? And how did this newfound knowledge lead to even more potent and lethal poisons? To find out, please continue watching videos in this new Venenamundi playlist. The history of poisoning is surely as old as humanity itself. As people foraged for food, it was undoubtedly fairly common for some to fall ill after eating unfamiliar plants, animals or fungi. We can safely assume that it didn't take very long to work out which ones to avoid and which were good to eat. They would simply have seen that after consuming some foods, fellow members of the band or tribe would become ill and possibly die. The same goes for getting bitten or stung by animals, perhaps by bees when taking their honey, or by a snake when sheltering in some cave or walking in the undergrowth. Sooner or later, someone would have noticed that some plants, while poisonous in large doses, could actually perhaps offer some beneficial effects when taken in smaller amounts. Those discovered first were probably herbs providing pain relief, whilst others had mind-altering effects and gave those who ingested them a religious or spiritual experience. It's most likely that this knowledge within a community would eventually come to reside in one single person, often a woman, who went on to become the healer or shaman. These individuals, knowing the effects of both the healing and poisonous properties of plants and animals, would undoubtedly become greatly respected by their own community. Fortunately, most would have used their knowledge for the good of the group, like treating sickness, healing wounds, communing with ancestor spirits, or preparing poisons for hunting. However, they might occasionally use their skills to remove troublesome members of their tribe, making them equally feared. Such dark abilities would usually be kept hidden amongst a select group of people, and whoever possessed them would usually pass these down by word of mouth to selected members of an inner circle. As for how these medicinal plants and poisons worked, no one knew. We have some evidence to suggest that these early societies thought that plants got their toxic effects from vapours escaping through the ground from the underworld. In turn, they believed that snakes got their venom from eating such plants, and that insects and scorpions got their painful stings by feasting on the carcasses of these snakes after they had died. In spite of this being totally wrong, the importance of medicinal and therapeutic plant knowledge amongst these people is easily shown by the fact that it appears in writing practically as soon as writing was invented. Our first examples come from the Sumerians living in the Middle East area known as Mesopotamia, around 5,500 years ago. There may be even earlier writings, but these haven't survived. The Sumerians, however, wrote on baked clay tablets, and these have stood the ravages of time. Deciphering these ancient texts has revealed that they, and subsequently the Babylonians, worshipped Gula, also known as Ninkarak, a goddess of healing and medical practice. The meaning of Gula's name is unclear, although the ancients created a folk etymology of the name based on the Sumerian word for great, Gu-la. Ninkarak probably means the Lady of Ka, possibly after the place she came from. All her surviving images show her standing with a dog, but sometimes seated, amongst the stars. The presence of dogs is significant. Before becoming associated with healing, Gula was revered as the goddess of dogs known as Bao or Baba. Her transformation happened when people noticed that when dogs lick their wounds, they seemed to heal faster. The animals thus began to be linked with healing, and it wasn't long before Bao, and later Gula, herself became tied with health. From then on, dogs are an integral part of Gula's worship and healing ceremonies, but it's not known how. In the ruins of the temple dedicated to her Isin, for example, were the remains of at least 30 dogs. So they may either have been sacrificed, or they may simply have been temple dogs buried with honour at the entrance. It's unlikely we'll ever know. In other medical texts, Gula is referred to as Belet Balati, Lady of Health, and Azu Galatu, Great Healer, maintaining her role as someone with great healing abilities. She was also called Ninisina, Ninimtunga, Ninibru, and Nimdundung, which also refer to these talents. The most commonly used of these epithets was Ninisina, meaning the Lady of Isin, where her temple was named I Ugra, Dog Temple. As for the city of Isin itself, it became a great centre for healing, and the temple is believed to have served as a training centre for physicians, who were then sent to other parts of the Sumerian and Babylonian empires as needed. As such, the Sumerians were far ahead of their time. Unlike civilizations that followed, they appear to have given women equal status to men, meaning that there was no issue with women becoming doctors, especially since the goddess of healing was also a woman. However, Gula also seems to have had a dark side as well. It seems that she could be called upon for curses as well as healing. When she became enraged, she was said to be capable of causing earthquakes and storms, earning her the titles Queen of the Tempest and She Who Makes Heaven Tremble. Indeed, her name was used in inscriptions on the graves of some rulers, like Nebuchadnezzar I, to warn grave robbers and anyone who might try to desecrate their tombs. The inscription on this memorial reads in part how if anyone could deface or remove it, may Gula destroy his property and blot out his seed. Another similar curse states, may Gula the great lady, the spouse of the winter sun, pour inside him a deadly poison, may she cause his blood and sweat to flow like water. Indeed, so confident was Nebuchadnezzar I in her healing as well as protective powers, that he appears to have freed her temple and priests from paying taxes. As for Gula's ability to instill terror, this no doubt stems from her ability to control people's health, and therefore by extension, the deaths as a healer. If she had the ability to heal, she could certainly cause damage to others. Her physicians would certainly possess the knowledge, and so as well as being respected, they were also greatly feared. As well as being a healing goddess, Gula therefore also became known as the mistress of charms and spells, the controller of noxious poisons, and also as the mistress of herbs. Incidentally, she was also called Great Healer of the Black-Headed Ones, pointing to her wide-reaching international significance, almost certainly healing visitors from Africa. Unfortunately, Sumerian written records do not extend to what these healing and poisonous substances were. For us to get an idea of some of these, the story must wait for ancient Egypt, and specifically to the Ebers Papyrus, written somewhere between 1550 and 1500 BCE. It was allegedly discovered between the legs of a mummy in the district of Asasif in Thebes. Somehow, in the mid-19th century, it made its way to Luxor and was subsequently bought by Edwin Smith in 1862. It then passed through several dealers of antiquities until ending up at the hands of the German Egyptologist and fiction writer Georg Moritz Ebers in 1872, after whom the document is named. 3 years later, Ebers published a copy in book format with an introduction, but it was not translated until 1890 by H. Joachim. The papyrus is now located at the University of Leipzig in Germany, where Ebers held a professorship until his retirement in 1889. When translated, the 20-metre-long scroll of papyrus was found to be remarkable. It mentions over 700 different substances and over 300 recipes detailing potions, salves and concoctions using poisonous as well as medicinal minerals and plants. Amongst these were the first mentions of opium, hemlock, lead, antimony, aconite and cannabis. The papyrus is divided into sections depending on the role of the medicinal substance, including stimulants, sedatives, hypnotics, narcotics, analgesics, expectorants, antispasmodics, emetics, disinfectants, deodorants, and over 10 others. Several ways of administering poisons and medicines are described, including infusions, injections, pills, capsules, powders, lotions, ointments, and plasters. The papyrus also describes treatments for several specific diseases, including diabetes and the guinea worm disease. The prescribed treatment for diabetes consists of a mixture of elderberry, acid plant fibres, milk, beer swill, cucumber flowers and green dates, although we have no idea which plant is referred to as acid. For the guinea worm, the recommended treatment consists of wrapping the emerging end of the parasite around a stick and slowly pulling it out. Interestingly, this remains more or less the same treatment over 3,500 years later. One of the most commonly used substances in the Ebers Papyrus is ochre, a type of clay. Presumably this was replenished by the Nile's flood each year, and its use is described for eye, intestinal and urological complaints. In addition to the Ebers Papyrus, several other Egyptian medical texts have also been unearthed since. These include the Hearst Papyrus from around 1600 BCE, the Bruges Papyrus from 1300 BCE, and the London Medical Papyrus from around the same time. Together, these are some of the oldest preserved medical documents known to us today. From them, it appears that the Egyptians may have known that the seeds of the peach, for example, and other members of the botanical genus Prunus, including the cherry, apricot and bitter almond, contain plant compounds known as cyanogenic glycosides. In some circumstances, when used crushed and submerged in water, the seeds of these release deadly cyanide. There's good chance that the resultant solution might have been employed as a lethal poison. Interestingly, the Egyptians believed that even their gods were susceptible to poisoning. For example, they believed that their god Ra nearly succumbed to a venomous snakebite, and that Horus suffered a fatal outcome from the sting of a scorpion. Egypt is also the place from which we have the first written record of a named person killed by poison. The honour goes to the king Psammetichus, otherwise known as Psamtik III, in 525 BC. Following his defeat at the Battle of Pelusium, Psamtik fled to Memphis, where he was captured. After a while, however, he attempted to raise a rebellion amongst the Egyptians. When his adversary, King Cambyses of Persia, learned of this, Psamtik is reported by the Greek historian Herodotus to have committed suicide, drinking a substance then known as bull's blood, and immediately died. Whether this was literally the blood of a bull or some other substance so named is not known. We do know, however, that the Greeks believed the actual bull's blood to be poisonous, and since Herodotus was Greek, then it may well be the case that he was writing with this in mind. However, in truth, no amount of drinking bull's blood would have killed Psamtik, so it must have been something else. Our final look at ancient Egypt concerns Zopyrus, a physician in Alexandria who treated the Egyptian king Ptolemy. Allegedly, he invented a powerful antidote against many poisons. The formula contained over 20 different plant extracts, including ginger, myrrh, and something called zopyron, seemingly named after him. It was supposed to treat poisoning by substances in food and also for venomous bites. Right, we've come to the end of this episode. Today we have looked at the beginnings of poisoning, ranging from the earliest days of humanity to the ancient Egyptians. In the next video, we will take our journey north to the land of the ancient Hebrews. Thank you for watching today. If you like the content, please give it a thumbs up and use the comments below to say what you think or what you'd like to see in the future. In the meantime, please don't forget to subscribe so that I don't get lonely, and please click on the notification bell to make sure you don't miss the next episode. Bye for now, and see you next time.